The island of Hawaii. This is the largest island in the United States, a place that houses 10 of the world's climate zones. Hawaii, the Big Island, is the realm of the gods and goddesses, whose exploits are enshrined in song and endure forever in the wind, the waves, and the sky. For nearly 40 years, a select group have come here to test themselves against this legendary island and the iconic sporting event that matches it in might and prestige. This ultimate challenge pushes the mind, body, and spirit to limits you have never known. But if one succeeds here and finishes, it will be remembered forever. You are an Ironman! Presented by Subaru, this is the 2017 Ironman World Championship. On the second weekend of October, on the island of Hawaii, Kailua Kona rises long before sunrise. The welcoming aloha spirit and calmness of the morning in this quiet tropical town belies the intensity of the day ahead. The 39th edition of the Ironman World Championship. Just over 2,500 athletes gather, including 115 from Canada, each one having earned a spot at one of 44 qualifying races around the globe. While making it to Ironman's main event is itself the realization of a dream for many. To others, it's a chance to place themselves among the greats. German Olympic gold medalist Jan Frodeno has done just that, earning the Ironman World Championship title the last 2 years.
Having won Hawaii is a pretty elite group of guys. Having repeated it, that was fantastic last year. But when the gun goes, all of that doesn't matter. And it's hard to remind myself of that sometimes, that really it's race by race.
To achieve the three-peat, Frodeno must stay ahead of his countryman, Sebastian Kienle, the 2014 Ironman World Champion, who placed second just 1 year ago. But he's not a second-place kind of guy.
What really gives me the biggest advantage, and that's in here, Ironman is all about doing the impossible things and the things you don't think you are capable of.
Last year, yet another German established himself as a contender. Patrick Lange had the run of his life, getting off the bike in 23rd place, but then running himself into third. Outside of the top 3 finishers from a year ago are some legitimate contenders, including a pair of Canadians. Lionel Sanders has competed in Ironman since 2010 and knows that the physical training is only part of what could propel him to victory.
Really, it's just going to come down to who wants it more and who has done the mental training. This means so much to me. I mean, I call upon that when the going gets tough.
For Brent McMahon, his triathlon journey began at the age of 10. The former Olympian comes to Kona for the 3rd time.
Everybody can have big plans, but it doesn't matter. It only matters what happens on the course, during the race, and you deal with it then.
On the women's side, Swiss triathlete Daniela Reeve has been thoroughly dominant since her Ironman debut in 2014. Having won back-to-back Ironman World Championships in 2015 and 2016, another victory this year will cement her legacy as one of the greatest triathletes of all time.
I know I'm on the peak of my career, so I look to all of the last 3 races in Kona. I look back and I'm like, that was awesome, and that's what I want to do again.
But there are many women who want to stop her run. Australia's Sarah Crowley comes in as the #1 challenger, confident in her talent, and all too aware that on any given day, anything is possible.
Kona every year is the opportunity to be able to compete against the best athletes in the world. A successful result is like a career-defining moment, so it would just be magic.
American Heather Jackson could also contend with Reef. She finished 3rd in last year's event, so this is her next chance, and she has been planning for it for years.
I've dedicated the past 3 seasons towards this race, dreaming of being the Ironman World Champ, and if that were to happen, for me it would almost be like, oh, my lifelong dream come true.
Unlike Jackson, 24-year-old Lucy Charles is a wild card to watch. The British triathlete is making the transition from age grouper to professional. Quite rare.
This is the 2017 Ironman World Championship, 39th edition of the greatest race on earth.
As the sun makes its way over the horizon, 93 elite professional athletes and 2,400 amateurs approach the waterline. All of them have one thing in common: nerves. The anticipation before the start can be a unique form of agony.
Race morning is a stressful experience. I get nervous. I try and get as much positive thinking going in my head as I possibly can.
Everybody's watching, and if your head's not on straight, then, a little things can turn into big things.
That is probably the scariest part of the day. Walking up to the steps, down into the water. Literally, I find myself like hyperventilating a little bit.
1 minute before start time, thousands of onlookers gather to witness the moment. Their eyes locked onto the first wave of athletes. 55 pro men, all of whom have what it takes to make this a race to remember.
This is the World Championship. Good luck.
With the boom of a cannon, the Ironman World Championship is underway.
There they go, your men professionals.
5 minutes later, it's time for the female pros.
2017 women professionals on their way.
When the stillness returns, the start line belongs to the age groupers. The heart and soul of any Ironman. These thousands of men and women, aged 18 to 84, will all need to undertake the 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike, and a full marathon, while withstanding the legendary Hawaii Island conditions. To each of them, Kona is more than just a race or a way to test their bodies. It's the culmination of the pinnacle of a dream, a challenge, a goal.
Ironman World Championship.
This is Subaru Ironman TV coverage of the Ironman World Championship. Subaru Ironman TV coverage of the Ironman World Championship is brought to you by Active. Find your active. Visit Go Hawaii. Let Hawaii happen. And Subaru, confidence in motion. Using his talent in the water, Kona rookie Josh Amberger creates separation from the established contenders. He opens the lead over the chase group, which includes two-time Ironman world champion Jan Frodeno and Canadian Brett McMahon. For the women, two pros have pulled ahead. One, a rookie in Great Britain's Lucy Charles, and the other, an All-American swimmer in Lauren Brandon. The two women are creating some distance from their main competition. Back-to-back Ironman world champion Daniela Reef. But they're also closing in on some of the professional men who had a 5-minute head start. That's how fast these women are moving. As the field spreads out across the 2.4-mile swim course, Josh Amberger approaches the swim exit with a minute and a half lead.
There he is, out of the water, Josh Amberger from Queensland, Australia.
With his swim complete, 29-year-old Amberger is the most hunted man in Hawaii. The chase group is nearing the swim exit at Transition 1, a group that includes two-time defending Ironman world champion Jan Frodeno.
They're coming out right now, and I see our defending champion looking behind him, Jan Frodeno. Nicholas Castellian from Australia, Marco Alfred, Estonia.
Frodeno leads the pack out of the water.
That, no doubt, was one of the largest packs we've ever seen come out of the water together.
Seconds in transition can be the difference at the end of the day. It creates a frantic pulse. Frodeno and 16 others, including Canadian Brent McMahon, head for the mountain line. Right now, they are all in play. The pursuit of Amberger begins. As Josh and the men make their way towards the famed Queen Kaahumanu Highway, the women, who started 5 minutes behind the men, are nearing the swim exit. The UK's Lucy Charles and American Lauren Brandon have caught up to the back end of the professional men, where they find Canadian Lionel Sanders, along with 2014 Ironman world champion Sebastian Kienle. They exit the water 6 minutes behind the lead man, and only a few strokes in front of Lucy Charles, who pulled ahead of Lauren Brandon.
Lucy Charles was first out of the women. Lauren Brandon.
Heading out on the bike on the 112-mile-long journey, Charles and Brandon have created a 4-minute lead over Daniela Reef.
We got our two-time defending champion, Daniela Reef.
Reef is composed and more capable than anyone else to overcome a 4-minute deficit. Everyone knows that. Josh Amberger settles into the bike ride on the Queen Kaahumanu Highway. He's pushing the pace on his own, but just behind is a large group who've increased their tempo. It includes Canadian Brett McMahon. However, there are concerns already. McMahon was stung by a jellyfish just moments prior to the start. The question is whether this will impact his performance on the biggest stage of the year.
It's an Ironman. It's 8+ hours of racing. There's going to be something somewhere in there that's going to happen that you're going to have to deal with.
McMahon pushes on as the chase group closes in on the leader. Fellow Canadian Lionel Sanders is also closing in on Amberger, along with former champion Sebastian Kienle. The pair have already begun to cut into their 6-minute deficit out of the water. As the front of the race heats up on the Queen Kaahumanu Highway, there are still over 2,400 age group athletes in the water of Kailua Bay. His athletes share this course with the professionals, confront the same challenges, exert the same effort. Some seek competition or the grueling physical challenge. For others, the journey of becoming an Ironman is more than a lesson in self-discovery. It's a chance to help others. Cancer. To varying degrees, we have all been affected by this horrible disease. Brent Smith is no exception. The Ottawa endurance athlete's life was changed forever when he learned that his childhood friend had cancer.
I was diagnosed with stage 4, late stage Hodgkin's lymphoma. It had actually metastasized throughout my body.
Derek would prevail in his fight with cancer. In part, he says, because of the Chicago-based charity, Ironman Angels.
They matched me with a mentor angel who had been through exactly what I was facing. I am convinced it absolutely had an incredibly positive effect on my outcome and my experience.
I like the fact that we're fresh.
Through Derek's fight, Brent became a vocal advocate in fundraising for cancer charities, including Ironman Angels.
At the heart of it, the mission for Ironman Angels is to ensure that no one has to face cancer on their own.
And always there, supporting his efforts, his fellow runners, which included Isabelle Labrie-Bolduc. Like Smith, active in cancer funding initiatives.
I think one of the things with runners is there's so much raw emotion when you're out there running. Your running partners see you at your best and your worst. And because we both were connected through cancer charities, to then come back and a month after having met her to find out that Isabelle was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer.
Through Brent, Isabelle was introduced to Ironman Angels. It was her positive experience that inspired Brent to take on the ambassador role in an official capacity with Ironman Angels. Isabelle hoped that one day she could become a mentor angel herself. Sadly, that day never came.
Her courage, her positivity in the face of this whole thing. There's a Stuart Scott quote that really epitomizes Isabelle's journey. You beat cancer in how you live and why you live and the manner in which you live. And that so captures the way that Isabelle faced this diagnosis.
As an Ironman Angel ambassador, Brent's passion and commitment led to him becoming recognized as the Subaru Road to Kona recipient for 2017.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Everybody that knows Brent knows what he's all about, and this is what he's all about.
I nominated Brent because he is just such a giver. He just makes other people feel loved and inspires them to turn around and do that to other people. When you see how selfless he is, you want to be that way too.
Told you I had very supportive friends.
Having known him for over 30 years, this is the guy that most deserves the opportunity, the chance to compete in Kona and to really represent the ideals of what an Ironman is all about.
Welcome back to Subaru Ironman TV. It's no secret, this island's beauty and majesty masks a frightening natural intensity. Across almost 4 decades of Ironman, many a supreme athlete have succumbed to its might. Yet for those men and women who have been here before, crafting tactics means you better always be ready to change those tactics. Australian Josh Aberger is a Kona rookie, but he's still in first place. His lead may be temporary, with 2-time Ironman world champion Jan Frodeno lurking.
The history of the race has proven that many times that people can get ahead of themselves, 20 plus minutes lead off the bike and they still don't manage to win. So it's a brutal race that way, and I think one of the biggest mistakes would be to think too early that you've got this in the bag.
Frodeno leads a pack of pursuers who know that while Amberger may be in the lead, it's Frodeno who needs to be watched.
Two-time Ironman world champion. He doesn't have a weakness, so how do you beat a guy who doesn't have a weakness? You have to take your biking and running to complete world-class levels.
Brett McMahon is no longer at the front of this race. The toxins from a jellyfish sting have completely thrown his system off, and with it, any shot at the win. For the women, Britain's Lucy Charles is still pushing the pace, with American Lauren Brandon just seconds behind. The two pros are currently riding faster than two-time returning Ironman world champion Daniela Reef, who respects their talent, but offers a few choice words of caution.
There's always a lot of girls who have a chance. Lucy is a fast girl. I raced her in Gran Canaria, and she bet me there, so I know she's strong. But if you go too fast, it can really hurt you as well.
As Charles and Brandon apply pressure from the front, there are a few women behind Reef who seek a share of the spotlight. Australian Sarah Crowley trails Reef, but isn't backing down to the champ or anyone else. The professional men were led by rookie Josh Amberger, but as they head toward the turnaround and the village of Havi, the leaders of the pack chasing him made up a 6-minute deficit, and they passed the Australian champion in a blur. Canadian Lionel Sanders, German Sebastian Kienle, and former Olympic rower and World Tour cyclist Cameron Worth now collectively set the pace. The three men are using their ability on the bike to break away from the chase pack. It's a tactic that has worked in the past. It forced defending champ Jan Frodeno and Patrick Lange into a crucial decision: try to catch them or save their energy for the run. For now, Sanders is the man setting the pace, and it's aggressive.
Lionel, he's definitely one of the guys who could influence the race on the bike. He likes to race, how we say in Germany, in the sun. So in the front. So probably I'm gonna be his shadow.
So far, this plan of attack is working out for Sanders. He's in the lead, adjusting on the go and pushing a rigorous pace. As Sanders continues to battle, his countryman Brett McMahon has been forced to withdraw due to the toxic effects of a jellyfish sting. For the women, Brit Lucy Charles is still leading, trailed closely by American Lauren Brandon. The two women swam their 2.4 miles together. Now they're surging together on the bike. Right behind them is none other than defending champion Daniela Reef. Though she came out of the water in 8th place, she's used the women in front of her as motivation to launch into 3rd. On the men's side, Canadian Lionel Sanders is approaching the turnaround in Havi. This is his 3rd attempt to win Kona, and so far, his plan looks sound. He leads the pack of pros. But Sebastian Kienle is on his tail, along with American Tim O'Donnell and Australian Cameron Worth. Each knows that this moment, this marker, is important.
You make the turn, and that's when all bets are off, because, being in the pack's not really going to help you very much anymore. It's a very individual bike ride at that point.
Jan Frodeno hits the turn and appears determined not to let the front of the race get too far ahead. But he knows that's difficult with Sanders in the lead.
Lionel Sanders is probably the guy who has vowed many times not to be in the pack. And he's made no secret of wanting to attack down Harvey. So he's obviously found that spot for himself as well.
Just after the turn, Cameron Worth forces the issue, jumping into the front position ahead of Sanders. His surge is expected. Worth is a former pro cyclist, whose goal is to open a huge lead to break the will of those chasing him. By around 9:30 a.m., The winds and temperature rise, and the age group athletes begin to feel the resistance that the island puts up against success. They may not be as fast as the pros, but everyone competing on Hawaii Island today is an exemplary athlete, and their backgrounds and stories of how they got here are as diverse as the landscape that surrounds them. For Brent Smith, the recipient of the Subaru Road to Kona Award, it's the sense of community that pushes him forward.
Brent really exemplifies what it is that we want to see in a Road to Kona winner. His ability to share, the way he interacts with his community, his volunteerism, that really screams volumes to us. There's a million reasons to stop, but one reason to keep going. And Brent has on his forearm wings of an angel, and that's the Ironman Angels.
It's going to be hard, I'm not going to lie. It's already getting a little on the warm side. This wind is starting to pick up, but it just pales in comparison to what people with cancer are going through, so suck it up, buttercup, and we'll get through it.
Back on the island of Hawaii, the 2017 Ironman World Championship rages on. The leader is Australian Cameron Wharf, who is using his impressive skills on the bike to the max. He's destroying the Ventum bike course, on pace to shatter the course record. Wharf is trailed by Canadian Lionel Sanders and 2014 Ironman World Champion Sebastian Kienle, two men who are quite familiar with this race and this island. The leader, Cameron Wharf, pulls into transition 2, completing the 112-mile Ventum bike course in record time.
Okay, here he comes. Cameron Woods and Cameron just set the new bike course record here in Kona.
Behind Wharf is Sanders.
Second place, Lionel Sanders, Ottawa, Canada.
And 30 seconds behind him is Kienle.
Cameron Woods heading out on the run.
As Wharf hits the Hokaone run course, world champ Jan Frodeno enters transition 2. Behind, but not so far behind that he can't make a move. On to the final leg of this Ironman World Championship, Lionel Sanders wastes little time. Sprinting out of transition, he catches a fading Wharf, and it all happens in the first mile. Sebastian Kienle has won it before, so he's aware he cannot let Sanders get too far ahead. Kienle is riding the line and hoping Sanders went out too fast too early. For the last 2 years, Jan Frodeno has laid his claim on this race. This is where world champions are made. All eyes are now on him as he makes his push for a three-peat.
Off the bike, Patrick Lange, who owns the run course record here.
Fellow German Patrick Lange is 10 minutes and 34 seconds behind the leader, which would seem like he is out of it. But he has record-breaking abilities in the run, if he still has the strength to tap into it. Next up, the professional women. Switzerland's Daniela Reef has found another gear as she overtakes Lauren Brandon. And as she scans ahead, she can see the leader, Lucy Charles, in the position she wants, right behind the lead Subaru.
My tactic the last few years were quite similar. Of course, you want to try to, make a move on the bike. It's always a nice thing if you can enter transition as the first person.
At one point on the bike, Reef was down 5.5 minutes to Charles. Now, as most expected, Reef catches her and can't help but manage a smile as she cycles by.
Okay, there she is.
Reef completes the bike in a time of 4 hours, 53 minutes, 10 seconds. within a minute of her time from a year ago, which launches her into first place.
Lucy Charles! And an Ironman debut! First year as a pro!
Charles ends the bike 2:54 behind Reef. While the time doesn't seem that far back, to catch the champion, Charles will likely need to post the fastest marathon of her life.
Lauren Brandon, Fort Worth, Texas!
Behind them, pulling into transition in third place, is Lauren Brandon. As Daniela Reef begins her marathon, 26.2 miles to go.
Two-time defending champion!
And a few minutes behind is Sarah Crowley, who tried to stay with Reef on the bike but couldn't maintain the pace on the final approach to transition 2. Just a minute behind Crowley is Heather Jackson. The American strength is the run, and she knows it's her opportunity to shine. In the early miles of the run, Lionel Sanders is in unfamiliar territory. He's leading in the last leg of this Ironman World Championship. 2 minutes behind is Sebastian Kienle. Things are still under control. Meanwhile, running into third is American Ben Hoffman. A run from him like this is not a surprise. But this is only 2 miles into the marathon, and back-to-back world champion Jan Frodeno appears to be in pain and has stopped running. The opportunity of a third Ironman World Championship could be all but gone. Welcome back to Subaru Ironman TV coverage of the Ironman World Championship, where the men's leader is a Canadian. Lionel Sanders from Windsor, Ontario, is determined to leave everything he has out on the course. His effort has given him a 2-minute lead over German Sebastian Kienle, who was unsurprised seeing Sanders in first place.
I think this year Lionel improved a lot. He's capable of winning this race one day.
I don't feel any pressure. I've come here to race. I've come here to go toe-to-toe with these best guys, and I'm very, very, very mentally prepared to go home in a stretcher, absolutely.
Sanders' passion and determination is readily apparent. But will his body cooperate? Meanwhile, just behind Kienle is American Ben Hoffman. He's had success on this island with a second-place finish in 2014. So is well aware of what's needed in the final stretch of the marathon if he's to reach the podium. Launching from 11th off the bike and into 4th place is Patrick Lange, whose form appears to be strong. He's outpacing the men in front of him and quickly closing the gap. As Lange approaches the toughest part of the run, the heat and humidity of what people call the energy lab, he passes Ben Hoffman and moves into 3rd place, within striking distance of Sanders and Kienle. On the women's side, Daniela Reef is pulling away from Lucy Charles. The defending champ is running as fluidly as she did the last 2 years, which won her back-to-back Ironman World Championships. As for Britain's Lucy Charles, now pacing 3 minutes behind Reef, the battle to remain in 2nd place has commenced. After overtaking Lauren Brandon, Heather Jackson and Aussie Sarah Crowley are in a furious battle.
I definitely feel pressure here in Kona coming off of last year's performance, but yeah, I'm just going to go out and execute what I know I can and kind of not think about that pressure.
For now, Jackson is holding on to 3rd place. Subaru Ironman TV coverage of the Ironman World Championship is brought to you by Cliff, official sports nutrition partner of the Ironman North American Series, Roca, Find Faster, and Subaru, Confidence in Motion. Back in the marathon on Hawaii Island, and the final stage of the Ironman World Championship. Lionel Sanders' game plan appears to be working in his favor. The Canadian triathlete came to Hawaii Island wanting to race with German Sebastian Kienle, a man who has achieved much success in Hawaii. After racing side by side for the swim and bike, Sanders pressed on the run and has been slowly pulling away from the German. As he enters the National Energy Lab, Sanders finds himself with a growing lead over Kienle, but the hardest part of the course is right in front of him.
I know all the other guys are training with the energy lab in their mind. For instance, Patrick Lange said a lot of his really hard training is all to run well in the energy lab. These guys are going to be tough as nails in these really tough conditions.
Trailing Sanders and Kienle is the surging Patrick Lange, the man with the fastest run on this course. The 31-year-old German is closing in on the two men ahead of him. But he may be running out of time. For the women, Switzerland's Daniela Rief was 8th out of the water and came off the bike with just over a minute lead over Lucy Charles. Since then, she sustained her strength and continued to expand on her lead. Charles is putting in a solid performance. If she can keep pace, second place will be hers. In fourth is Australia's Sarah Crowley, who's now trying to get back into a podium position. She's closed the gap between herself and Jackson. As Crowley makes her move past the American, will Jackson cede third without a fight, or will she make one final push? Making the turn in the energy lab, the leader, Lionel Sanders, now has a significant hitch in his running stride. It seems the legendary Kona conditions are wearing on the Canadian. Sebastian Kienle is still just a few minutes behind. And even more concerning to both Sanders and Kienle should be Patrick Lange, who looks as though he just started the marathon, as opposed to being near its finish.
Patrick's a guy who could be a runaway. He's legit, and he'll be here for the next 5-6 years. So it's only going to get better.
The final 6 miles comes with 134 behind you. On this road back to town, the finish line, on a lead drive, dreams have been crushed. And for the leader, Lionel Sanders, his dream seems on the verge of becoming a nightmare. Not far behind him, Sebastian Kienle's dream of another Ironman World Championship appears to be fading. Losing time out of the energy lab, Kienle is seeing Lange run past him in a flash. Patrick Lange is picking up his pace, while the rest of the field holds on for dear life. It's coming down to time, distance, and what's in your soul, with just 3 miles to go. One wonders if Lionel Sanders can work through the pain and hold off the fastest runner in the field. The 2017 Ironman World Championship is nearing its completion for the professional athletes. For 23 miles of the marathon, Lionel Sanders has been pushing his body to the limits. You can hear how much he wants it. But simply wanting something doesn't beat someone else wanting it too. Down 10 minutes off the bike, Patrick Lange has been flying through the run course. Behind Lange, Great Britain's David McNamee is having his own stellar marathon. He came off the bike with Lange 10 minutes back, but McNamee's pace now has him overtaking Kienle and into third place. As Kienle falls to fourth, Lange surges past the struggling Canadian, Sanders. His focus is now clear, his rhythm smooth. An Ironman World Championship is within reach. Back in the women's professional race, Daniela Reef is showcasing her all-around strengths. Out of the 108th place, she put in the fastest bike on the day and has been unchallenged on the run. An incredible third world title in a row seems inevitable. The question now becomes, who will place behind her? The difference between second and fourth place is only 2 minutes. Currently, Lucy Charles is holding on to second. But Sarah Crowley is closing in after finally pushing ahead of Heather Jackson. As their battle for the podium continues in the women's field, the day is nearing an end for the professional men. And no man has ever run the Ironman course faster than Patrick Lange. Ironman World Champion, the most coveted title in the sport, and German men have owned it for the past 3 years. Kienle in 2014, Rodeno in 15 and 16, now make it 4 consecutive German wins, but none faster than this.
Here he is! Your 2017 Ironman World Champion, Patrick Lange! And a new course record!
In his third attempt at this race, Canadian Lionel Sanders nearly pulled it off today. He'll settle for a hard-earned second place.
Let's welcome from Windsor, Canada, Lionel Sanders!
The UK's David McNamee had the second fastest run on the day, which moves him into an impressive third-place finish and a spot upon the podium. Kienle fought to the end, leaving it all on the course. He claims the fourth spot. This celebration is just beginning. Now, this storied finish line prepares for the professional women. Running as fast as she did when she started the marathon, Switzerland's Daniela Reef is now closing out her championship day. Reef heads up a lead, driving first, a familiar sight to Ironman fans.
Here come the Warriors, bringing Daniela home!
Clearly overwhelmed, she achieves the extraordinary 3 straight Ironman World Championships.
Your 2017 Women's Ironman Champion, Daniela Reef!
In her first World Championship as a professional, Lucy Charles takes second place.
Lucy Charles!
The 24-year-old Brit is surprised and overjoyed by her remarkable finish. And rounding out the women's podium is Australia's Sarah Crowley.
Sarah Crowley, third place overall!
She placed 15th last year, but earns a spot upon the podium in 2017. 1 minute behind Crowley, American Heather Jackson takes fourth.
Heather Jackson, USA!
The professionals have crowned their 2017 Ironman World Champions, but this race is far from over. Olympic gold medalist and 2-time Ironman World Champion, Jan Frodeno, shows it's not always about winning. He could have dropped out at the 2-mile mark on the run. When he started walking, instead, Jan chose to finish where he started.
Jan Frodeno, Germany! You are an Ironman!
There are still over 2,400 athletes out on the course, fighting to make it across the finish line. All of them hoping to hear their name as they cross.
Sergio Acosti, Bellinen, you are an Ironman. And Lucas Antonetti, Alba, Rio Marino, Adam Hill, California, you're an Ironman.
Hearing those names and seeing those faces means they are alive and thriving. each person etching him or herself into the record book. As the sun slips towards the horizon, many names are in jeopardy of never being heard. To finish, to become an Ironman, these everyday men and women must look inward, embracing the reasons that brought them here. Many of these athletes started the day racing against others in their age group. Now, they are racing against the clock. They all must finish within 17 hours. Not a single second more.
Can't complain. Getting to live my dream, so.
For Brent Smith, he pushes on in memory of his friend Isabel and the charity Ironman Angels.
Isabel gives me wings at the best of times, and so she'll give me wings again in Kona.
They come from 66 different countries around the world. Firefighters, doctors, bankers, architects, young and old.
You're an Ironman Raymond! Secret, Antonuit, New Zealand Ursula! Michael Dane, amazing! Yes, sir! Erica Chris, you are an Ironman! Bob Basiri, Trisha Delamora! Adrian Holt, Andrew Jameson!
Each of them comes with a story. Each of them has their own reason for being here. For Brent Smith, this year's Subaru Road to Kona recipient, his reason for being here, that no one should have to face cancer alone.
Amazing!
Through the Ironman Angels, and efforts from people like Brent, perhaps that too is possible.
You are